The library was dead silent, except for the sound of tearing fabric. Madison Walker's shirt ripped at the shoulder, exposing a jagged scar that ran from her collarbone down to her upper arm. 4 boys surrounded her, their laughter echoing off the walls like broken glass. But Madison didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. Instead, her eyes turned cold, darker than the October storm brewing outside Westfield High School's windows. What happened next would change everything about how these boys saw strength, pain, and what it really meant to be a man. Before I tell you how Madison, a quiet girl half their size, transformed these bullies into advocates for vulnerability and healing, I want to take just a moment to thank you for being here. Stories like Madison's exist all around us, waiting to inspire change. If this story moves you, please consider hitting that like button and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps these messages reach more people who might need to hear them. And if you feel called to support the creation of more stories that shine light in dark places, you can click the thanks button beneath this video. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. 2 hours earlier, Madison sat alone at her usual table in the back corner of the library. The afternoon sun filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. She traced her fingers over handwritten notes in the margins of a tactical manual, her father's careful script still visible after 2 years. Remember, Madison. One note read, "True warriors choose their battles." Her eyes lingered on those words, unaware that her biggest battle was walking through the library doors at that very moment. Tyler Morrison entered first, his 6'3" frame filling the doorway. The quarterback's letterman jacket stretched tight across his shoulders, the same shoulders that had carried Westfield to state championships 2 years running. Behind him followed Brandon Hayes. All muscle and no mercy. The linebacker who hit so hard opposing teams called him the Hammer. Kyle Peterson came next, state wrestling champion with arms like steel cables. And finally, Derek Chen, valedictorian wannabe who'd traded his integrity for protection from the very boys he now followed. Madison felt their presence before she saw them. A shift in the air, like predators entering a hunting ground. She kept reading, her breathing steady, controlled. Her father had taught her that panic was the enemy of survival. Stay calm, assess, adapt. His voice echoed in her memory. She counted their footsteps without looking up. 4 sets, different weights. Tyler's confident stride, Brandon's heavy lumber, Kyle's wrestler's glide, Derek's nervous shuffle. Well, well, well. Tyler's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Look who we have here, little Miss Nobody, reading her little book all alone. Madison turned a page, her movements deliberate, unhurried. The action was so casual, so dismissive, that Tyler's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to being ignored. Star quarterbacks didn't get ignored, especially not by quiet girls who ate lunch alone and never came to games. Hey! Tyler slammed his palm on the table. The sound cracked through the library like a gunshot. I'm talking to you. Finally. Madison looked up. Her gray eyes met Tyler's brown ones, and something in that gaze made him step back involuntarily. There was no fear there, no submission, just a calm assessment, like she was calculating exactly how many moves it would take to drop him. Can I help you? Her voice was quiet, controlled, each word carefully measured. Brandon laughed, a harsh sound. Yeah, you can help us. See, we got this essay due Monday, American history. Figured someone who spends all her time in here must be smart enough to handle it. 4 essays, actually, Kyle added, cracking his knuckles. The sound popped through the air like firecrackers. "One for each of us!" Derek shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between Madison and the exit. "Guys, maybe we should just—" "Shut up, Derek," Tyler cut him off. "You're either with us or against us. Remember that." Madison closed her book slowly, her movements fluid. "I'm not doing your essays." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Tyler's face darkened, red creeping up from his collar. Nobody said no to Tyler Morrison, his father, drunk and bitter from his failed NFL career, had beaten that lesson into him since he could walk. You take what you want. You never show weakness. You never back down. "I don't think you understand." Tyler leaned forward, his breath hot with the smell of energy drinks and arrogance. "This isn't a request. 4 of us. 1 of you. Do the math." Madison stood, and all 4 boys tensed. She was smaller than any of them, maybe 5'4", 110 pounds soaking wet. But something in the way she moved, smooth and deliberate, like water flowing around rocks, set off alarm bells in their heads. Prey animals didn't move like that. Predators did. "The math," Madison picked up her book, holding it against her chest. 4 boys who can't write their own essays trying to intimidate one girl who can. "That math," Brandon's face flushed. "Listen here, you little—" His hand shot out to grab her shoulder. Madison moved faster than thought. She shifted her weight, pivoted on her left foot, and Brandon's hand grabbed empty air. He stumbled forward, off balance, and Madison was already 2 steps away. "How did she—" Kyle's voice trailed off, genuine confusion in his tone. Tyler's eyes narrowed. "Lucky dodge, grab her." This time Brandon and Kyle moved together, trying to flank her. Madison's mind processed their approach in milliseconds. Brandon coming from the left, telegraphing with his shoulders. Kyle from the right, lower, going for a wrestling takedown. Amateur moves. Her father would have laughed. She stepped backward, using the table as a barrier. Brandon reached across, trying to grab her book. Madison let him get close, then snapped her elbow up. Not hard enough to break anything, just enough to send a sharp pain shooting up his forearm. Brandon yelped, jerking his hand back. "She knows some moves," Kyle said, a new respect creeping into his voice. "Cute." "Cute," Madison's voice remained level, but something flickered in her eyes. A memory, 8 years old, in their backyard. Her father in his Navy SEAL training gear, teaching her the basics. Elbows are weapons of surprise. Madison, close range, devastating impact. But only use them when you must. Tyler had seen enough. He charged forward, using his size advantage. Madison could have dodged again, could have maintained distance. But she needed them to understand. Sometimes the best defense was letting the enemy think they'd won. Tyler's hands reached for her book, the tactical manual her father had annotated during his last deployment. The one thing she had left of him besides memories and scars. Their hands met on the binding, Tyler pulling hard. Madison held firm. "Let go," Tyler growled, yanking harder. The inevitable happened. The old binding, weakened by years of use and love, gave way. But it wasn't the book that tore. Tyler's violent pull sent Madison spinning, and his grip caught her shirt sleeve. The fabric ripped with a sound like thunder, tearing from shoulder to mid-back. Silence fell like a hammer. Madison stood there, her shirt hanging loose, exposing her left shoulder and upper back. But it wasn't the exposed skin that made all 4 boys freeze. It was the scar, thick and jagged. It ran from her collarbone down past her shoulder blade. A brutal reminder of violence survived. Tyler recovered first, his shock morphing into cruel amusement. "What's that daddy issues scar? Someone beat you up before we could—" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Madison's hand tightened on what remained of her father's manual. Her breathing changed, became something deeper, more dangerous. The calm control cracked, just slightly, revealing something underneath that made Derek take an involuntary step backward. "You want to know about this scar?" Madison's voice was different now, quiet, still, but with an edge like a blade being drawn from its sheath. The memory crashed through her defenses. 3 years ago, their basement, converted into a training room. Her father home on leave. His last leave, as it turned out. They were sparring, him teaching her advanced techniques. SEAOs. Cloda's quarter combat. She was 15, cocky, thought she had him figured out. "You have to be ready for pain," he'd said, circling her like a wolf. "Real fights aren't like movies. Madison, they're ugly, they hurt, and sometimes—" He'd moved faster than she could track, a combination she'd never seen before. She'd tried to counter, zagged when she should have zigged. His tactical knife, supposedly safe with its dulled edge, caught her wrong. The accident tore through shirt and skin, sending her crashing into equipment. The blood came fast. The pain came faster. But what she remembered most was her father's face. The great Navy SEAO. The man who'd survived 3 tours in places the news wouldn't name. Fell to his knees beside her, tears streaming down his face as he pressed his shirt to her wound, calling for her mother, apologizing over and over. "It's okay, Dad," she'd whispered through the pain. "I'm tough like you." He'd held her then, blood and tears mixing. "No, baby girl, you're tougher. So much tougher." 6 months later, an IED in Afghanistan ensured he'd never hold her again. Madison blinked, returning to the present. 4 boys staring at her. 4 boys who thought they knew what strength looked like. That scar. She turned, making sure they could all see it clearly. "Last gift from my dad. Navy CAL, Team 6. He was teaching me how to survive people like you." Brandon and Kyle exchanged glances, something in Madison's tone. In the casual way she'd said Team 6 sent warning signals through their bully-trained instincts. But Tyler was too far gone, too deep in his own pain to recognize danger. "Navy SEAL," Tyler scoffed. "Right, and I'm going pro next year. Derek, stop standing there like an idiot. Help them hold her." Derek hesitated, conflict clear on his face. "Tyler, this is too far. We should—" "I said help them." Tyler's mask slipped, revealing the desperation underneath. "Or maybe you want to go back to eating lunch in the bathroom. Remember freshman year? Remember what we saved you from?" Derek's shoulders slumped. He moved forward reluctantly, joining the circle around Madison. 4 boys, 1 girl. The math Tyler loved so much. "Here's what's going to happen," Tyler said, confidence returning with numbers. "You're going to apologize for disrespecting us. You're going to do our essays. And you're going to learn your place in this school. Brandon, Kyle, hold her arms. Let's teach her some respect." Brandon reached for Madison's left arm, while Kyle went for her right. Their movements were coordinated, practiced. How many kids had they done this to? How many had they broken with this same routine? Madison whispered something. What? Tyler leaned closer. I said, 3 seconds. Madison's eyes locked onto his. That's all I need. Tyler laughed. Brandon and Kyle grabbed for her arms. Derek hung back, ashamed but afraid. And Madison moved. The next 3 seconds unfolded like a deadly ballet. Madison dropped her weight, breaking Brandon's grip before it could solidify. Her left hand snapped out, finding the pressure point in his wrist that made his entire arm go numb. As Brandon recoiled, she pivoted, using his body as a shield against Kyle's approach. Kyle, trained wrestler, adapted quickly. He dropped low, going for her legs. Madison had expected this. She brought her knee up, not to strike, but to redirect. Kyle's momentum carried him past her into Brandon, both boys tangling in a heap of limbs and curses. 2.5 seconds. Tyler, seeing his friends fumbling, rushed forward with a roar. Madison stood her ground, waiting until the last possible instant. Then she sidestepped, one hand on Tyler's jacket, adding to his momentum, unable to stop. Tyler crashed face first into a bookshelf. Books cascaded down like paper rain. 3 seconds exactly. Madison stood in the center of the chaos, breathing steady, shirt still torn, scar still visible. But now the vulnerability was gone, replaced by something the boys had never encountered: controlled violence, trained precision, a warrior's calm. Tyler pushed himself up from the floor, blood streaming from his nose. You little... I'll destroy you. My dad used to say, Madison's voice cut through his rage, that real strength is staying calm when everyone else loses control. You're not strong, Tyler. You're just loud. Something snapped in Tyler's eyes. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered completely. He reached for his phone with shaking hands, scrolling frantically through videos. You want to see strong. You want to see what real men do. He found what he was looking for and hit play, holding the phone up like a weapon. But in his rage and pain, he'd selected the wrong video, instead of whatever threatening content he'd intended. The screen showed a different scene. Tyler's house. His father, drunk, face red with rage, and his voice, slurred but clear. You're weak, pathetic. Not like me. I could have made it in the NFL if I hadn't knocked up your mother. You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. The video kept playing, the sound of flesh hitting flesh. Tyler's younger voice, maybe 14, crying, begging, the camera shaking as he'd tried to secretly record evidence of what his home life really was. Tyler realized his mistake too late. Brandon, Kyle, and Derek had all seen, had all heard. The quarterback's deepest shame laid bare in the quiet library. Turn it off, Tyler whispered, but his thumb wouldn't work right. The video kept playing, his father's voice getting louder, meaner. Real men don't cry. Real men take what they want. Real men. Madison moved then, but not to attack. She stepped forward and gently took the phone from Tyler's trembling hands. She stopped the video, deleted it from the recently played list, and handed it back. We all fight demons, she said quietly, but your demon isn't me. It never was. Tyler stared at her, then at his friends who'd seen everything, his carefully constructed image of strength crumbling like wet sand. The silence stretched between them all, heavy with revealed truths and shattered pretenses. Brandon slowly got to his feet, rubbing his numb arm. He looked at Madison's scar again. Then at Tyler's bloody nose, then at his own hands. Something shifted in his expression. Kyle remained on the ground, not from injury, but from something deeper. Derek hadn't moved at all. Tears streaming down his face, and in that moment, in that silent library with torn clothing and broken masks, something fundamental changed. The question now wasn't whether Madison could defeat them physically. She'd already proven that. The question was whether any of them were strong enough to face the truth she'd just revealed. About strength, about pain, about what it really meant to be human in a world that demanded they be something else. The storm outside finally broke. Rain hammering against the windows like applause for a performance none of them had expected. And Madison Walker, the quiet girl with the scar and the dead father, stood in the center of it all, waiting to see which version of these boys would stand up next. The warriors they pretended to be, or the wounded humans they actually were. The rain against the library windows sounded like 1,000 fingers tapping, waiting for someone to make the next move. Brandon Hayes stood there, his numb arm hanging at his side, staring at Madison's scar like it held answers to questions he'd never dared ask. The linebacker everyone called the Hammer suddenly looked more like a lost boy than a weapon. Brandon's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. My dad makes me quit things. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. Tyler, blood still dripping from his nose, looked at his friend in confusion. What are you talking about? Brandon's eyes never left Madison's scar. That mark, it tells a story, doesn't it, about pain that teaches instead of just hurts. His good hand reached into his backpack, movements careful, almost reverent. My dad says real men don't create. They destroy. Real men hit. They break things. They don't. He pulled out a sketchbook, its black cover worn from hiding, from being shoved quickly into bags when footsteps approached. They don't draw. Kyle pushed himself up from the floor, his wrestler's grace abandoned. Brandon! What? Shut up! Brandon's voice broke completely now. Just shut up and let me. He opened the sketchbook with shaking hands, page after page of incredible art. Portraits of students when they thought no one was looking. Landscapes of places that only existed in his mind. Abstract pieces that bled emotion onto paper. Freshman year, Brandon whispered. Art class. Mrs. Rodriguez said I had real talent, said I could get scholarships, go to art school. I was so happy. Ran home to tell Dad. His laugh was bitter. He burned my supplies in the backyard, made me watch, said I needed to stop acting like a what? Madison's voice was gentle now, the warrior stance relaxing into something more human. You know what? Brandon couldn't say the word. Made me join football, bulked me up, taught me to hit things instead of create them. And I got good at it. Got so good at breaking things that I forgot I ever wanted to make them. He looked at Tyler, his best friend since middle school. Remember when we used to build forts before high school, before we decided being cruel was the same as being strong? Tyler wiped blood from his face, his eyes darting between Brandon and Madison like a trapped animal. That was kid stuff. We grew up. No, Kyle spoke suddenly, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone turn. We just learned to hide better. Chara, the state wrestling champion, the guy who could pin anyone in under 30 seconds, slowly rolled up his sleeves. The fluorescent library lights caught the scars immediately. Thin white lines crisscrossing his forearms like a roadmap of pain. Some old and faded, some fresh enough to still be pink. Derek gasped. "Kyle, wrestling hides these," Kyle said, his voice detached, clinical. "Long sleeves at practice, nobody questions it. Pain on the outside to ignore what's inside." He traced one particularly deep scar. "This one's from when I won state. Everyone cheering. My dad hugging me, coaches saying I'd go Division I. And all I could think was how empty it felt. How the only time I felt anything real was when the blade—" "Stop!" Tyler's voice was desperate now. "Stop talking! Both of you! This is what she wants. She's manipulating you, making you weak." "Weak?" Kyle's laugh was hollow. "Tyler, I tried to kill myself last year, swallowed a bottle of pills after practice. You know what saved me? Brandon found me, made me throw up, stayed with me all night. Never told anyone. That's strength, that's brotherhood, not this." Madison watched the dynamics shift. The careful hierarchy crumbling. These boys who'd terrorized the school, who'd made her life difficult since she'd transferred in, were just broken kids playing roles they'd been assigned. But understanding didn't equal forgiveness. Not yet. Derek had been silent through all of this, his thin frame trembling. The valedictorian wannabe who'd traded integrity for protection looked between his protectors and his conscience. Finally. Something clicked behind his eyes. He stepped forward, placing himself between Tyler and Madison. "Enough." Derek's voice was quiet, but firm. "This isn't who we are. This isn't who we have to be." Tyler's face contorted with rage. "Get out of the way, Derek. Don't forget what I saved you from. Don't forget what happens to weak little Asian nerds who—" The slap echoed through the library like a gunshot. Derek's hand stick tongue from the impact, but he didn't lower it. Tyler stood frozen, his cheek reddening, more shocked than hurt. "My name," Derek said slowly, "is Derek Chen, not Asian nerd, not math boy, not any of the things you've called me to make yourself feel bigger. I'm done pretending your version of strength is worth protecting." "You hit me." Tyler's voice was small, confused. "You actually hit me, and I'm still standing," Derek replied. "Turns out I didn't need you to protect me. I needed you to stop being the thing I needed protection from." Something snapped in Tyler's eyes. The confusion crystallized into pure rage. All his father's lessons, all the pain he'd swallowed and transformed into cruelty, erupted at once. He charged past Derek, past Brandon and Kyle, straight at Madison, with a roar that was more wounded animal than human. Madison could have dodged, could have redirected him into another bookshelf, could have put him down hard enough to end this. But something in that roar, that pure expression of pain, changed her mind. Sometimes the greatest mercy was letting someone exhaust their rage against something that wouldn't break. She let him grab her. Tyler's hands found her shoulders, his momentum driving them both backward. Madison controlled the fall, rolling with it, and in a movement too fast for untrained eyes to follow. She reversed their positions. Tyler hardly knew what happened before he found himself face down on the carpet, Madison's arm snaking around his neck from behind. The rear naked choke, one of the first advanced techniques her father had taught her. "This hold is intimate," he'd said. "You feel their pulse, their breath, their fear. You hold their life in your arms. Use it only when you must. Release it the moment you can." Tyler struggled, his football-trained muscles straining against the hold. But Madison had leverage, technique, and something more: purpose. She applied pressure carefully, Enough to control, but not to damage. "Shh," she whispered in his ear. "Stop fighting. Just breathe." "Let go," Tyler gasped, his face reddening. "Not yet." Madison's voice was calm. "First, you need to understand something. This feeling, this helplessness, this fear, this is what you give others every day. How does it feel?" Tyler's struggles intensified, then gradually weakened. Not from the choke. Madison was too careful for that, but from something else. The tears came first, leaking from his eyes onto the library carpet. Then the sobs. Great heaving things that shook his entire body. "I can't!" Tyler cried, all pretense gone. "I can't be weak. My dad will." Madison loosened the hold slightly, just enough for Tyler to breathe easier, but not enough to escape. "Crying isn't weak, Tyler. It's human." "You don't understand." Tyler's words came in gasps between sobs. "When the team loses, when I'm not perfect, he hits her, my mom, says it's my fault, says if I was stronger, if I was more like him." The confession broke something in the room. Brandon and Kyle moved closer, their own tears falling. Derek knelt beside them. 4 boys who'd built their identities on false strength, crumbling together. "My dad," Tyler continued, his voice raw, "broke 3 of her ribs last month, after I threw 2 interceptions against East High. Said real men don't make mistakes. Said I needed to learn consequences, but he didn't hit me. Never hits me. Just her. And she takes it and tells me it's not my fault, but I know. I know." Madison's hold transformed from restraint to embrace. She pulled Tyler against her. This boy who'd tried to hurt her, who'd torn her shirt and mocked her scar. She held him while he broke apart completely. "Listen to me," Madison said, her voice fierce with conviction. "Your father is wrong. Real men don't hurt others to feel strong. Real men protect. Real men admit when they're scared. Real men ask for help." "Like your dad?" Tyler asked through his tears. "My dad cried," Madison said, "the night before his last deployment. Held me and my mom and cried because he was scared he might not come back. That didn't make him weak. It made him human. And when that IED hit his convoy, he still managed to pull 2 wounded soldiers to safety before... Now Madison was crying too. 5 teenagers in a circle on the library floor, their tears mixing, their pain shared. The storm outside raged on, but inside, something else was happening. Something that looked less like victory and more like healing. Ahem. They all looked up. Mrs. Thompson, the head librarian, stood there, gray-haired, cardigan-wearing Mrs. Thompson, who'd seemed ancient when they were freshmen. She surveyed the scene, the torn shirt, the scattered books, Tyler's bloody nose, the tears on every face. "I've been watching," she said simply. "From my office. Saw everything." Tyler tried to pull away from Madison, panic in his eyes. "Mrs. T, I can explain." "No need," Mrs. Thompson said. She moved slowly, deliberately, and did something none of them expected. She sat down on the floor with them, her old knees creaking. "You know, I had a son once, David, bright boy, quiet, loved to read." The teenagers exchanged glances, unsure where this was going. "He was bullied," Mrs. Thompson continued. "Every day for 3 years, kids who thought cruelty was strength, kids who'd been hurt themselves and passed that hurt along like a virus." She paused, her eyes distant. David took his own life 6 years ago, left a note saying he couldn't bear to wake up afraid anymore. The silence was deafening. Kyle's hand unconsciously went to his scars. I've worked in this library ever since, Mrs. Thompson said. Watching, waiting, hoping to see something I never thought I would. She looked at each of them in turn. You 5 just saved each other. Do you understand that you just broke a cycle that claims so many? Madison felt something in her pocket. Her father's tactical manual, somehow still with her through everything. As she pulled it out, a sealed envelope fell onto the floor. Her name was written on it in her father's handwriting, with additional words, to open when you use what I taught you. With trembling hands, she opened the letter, her father's writing, a bit messier than his usual precise script, filled the page. My dearest Madison, she read aloud, her voice shaking. If you're reading this, it means you've had to use the skills I taught you. I'm sorry for that. I hoped the world would be kinder. But I'm also proud, because I know you used them not just to fight, but to protect. Not just to win, but to heal. The scar you carry, the one I gave you by accident, has haunted me every day since, but you taught me something that day. Real strength isn't about never falling. It's about helping others stand. It's about turning our wounds into wisdom, our pain into purpose. I don't know what situation led you to open this letter, but I know you. I know you found a way to create warriors of peace, not war, to show others that vulnerability is not weakness, but the greatest courage of all. All my love, Dad. P.S. The real secret technique I never taught you. It's forgiveness, for others, for yourself. Use it well. Madison folded the letter carefully, then looked around the circle. Tyler, blood dried on his face, shame and hope warring in his eyes. Brandon, sketchbook clutched like a lifeline. Kyle, scars exposed but somehow looking lighter. Derek, spine straight for maybe the first time in years. And Mrs. Thompson, guardian angel in a cardigan. What happens now? Tyler asked, his voice small. My dad, the school, everything's going to fall apart. No, Madison said firmly. Everything's going to fall into place. Mrs. Thompson, Tyler needs to report his father, for his mom's sake. Mrs. Thompson nodded. I'll help. I know people, good people who can make sure you and your mother are safe. And us? Brandon asked. What do we do? Madison stood, and one by one, helped each of them to their feet. We change things. We show others what we learned today. That strength comes in different forms, that asking for help is brave, that art and wrestling and grades and football can coexist with kindness. 6 months later, the Westfield High School gymnasium was packed, not for a game or a pep rally, but for something new. A banner hung across the stage, Strength in Vulnerability, a new definition of courage. Tyler Morrison stood at the podium, no longer the swaggering quarterback, but something more real. His mother sat in the front row, free from his father who was serving time for domestic violence. Tyler's voice was steady as he spoke. 6 months ago, I thought strength meant never showing weakness. I thought being a man meant being cruel. I was wrong. He looked at Madison, who stood with the other presenters. A girl half my size taught me that real strength is admitting when you're broken and asking for help to heal. Brandon was next, his art displayed around the gym, portraits of students being their authentic selves. I learned that creation takes more courage than destruction, that beauty and strength aren't opposites but partners. Kyle showed his scars without shame. I learned that the pain we hide grows in darkness, but when we share it, when we let others see our wounds, we find out we're not alone. We find out that survival is just the first step. The real victory is learning to live. Derek spoke about finding his voice. I learned that protection based on fear isn't protection at all. Real safety comes from communities that accept us as we are, not as they think we should be. Finally, Madison took the stage. She wore a tank top, her scar visible and unashamed. My father taught me to fight, but more importantly, he taught me when not to. He taught me that the greatest warriors are those who create peace, not war, who build rather than break, who lift others up rather than tear them down. The crowd was silent, absorbing every word. In the audience sat dozens of students who'd been bullied, who'd been bullies, who'd been both. Mrs. Thompson wiped tears from her eyes, seeing her son's legacy transformed into something beautiful. "We're starting a program," Madison announced. "Self-defense training that's about more than physical techniques. Support groups for those dealing with trauma. Art therapy with Brandon. Peer counseling with Derek. Athletic mentorship with Tyler and Kyle that focuses on healthy competition and emotional wellness. Because strength isn't about being invulnerable. It's about being human together." The applause was thunderous, but more than that, it was hopeful. In a world that often confused cruelty with strength, fear with respect, silence with peace. 5 teenagers had discovered a different way. They'd learned that the most powerful thing you could say wasn't "I'm strong," but "I need help." That the bravest thing you could do wasn't fight, but forgive. That the greatest victory wasn't defeating others, but helping them discover their own strength. As the presentation ended and students signed up for programs by the dozens, Madison felt her father's presence, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a legacy living on in every person who chose healing over hurting, connection over isolation, vulnerability over false strength. The girl with the scar had kept her promise. She'd created warriors of peace. And it all started with a torn shirt, a revealed wound, and the revolutionary idea that maybe, just maybe, we're all fighting battles no one knows about. And maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't to fight harder, but to fight together. The storm had passed. The sun was shining through the gymnasium windows, and in Westfield High School. Strength had a new definition, one written not in pain, but in hope. Not in fear, but in love. Not in isolation, but in community. The quiet girl in the library had changed everything. Not with her fists, though she could fight. Not with her words, though she could inspire, but with her courage to show that even the strongest among us carry scars. And sometimes, those scars are exactly what others need to see to believe they can heal too. 1 year later, Madison stood in the same library where everything had changed. But this time, she wasn't alone. The space had been transformed into the Marcus Walker Memorial Center, named after her father. The quiet tables where she'd once sat isolated were now filled with students helping each other, not just with homework, but with life. "Madison?" a voice called out. She turned to see a freshman, maybe 14, holding a crumpled note. "They said you could help." The boy was small for his age, wire-rimmed glasses held together with tape. The note in his hand was cruel, the kind of anonymous hate that once would have destroyed a kid's entire week. Madison recognized the fear in his eyes. The same fear she'd seen in Derek years ago. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Jamie," he whispered. "Jamie Rodriguez." "Well, Jamie, let's talk about what real strength looks like." Before she could continue, Tyler appeared, no longer in his Letterman jacket, but in a simple T-shirt that read, "Vulnerability is courage." He'd lost his football scholarship when everything came out about his father, but he'd gained something more valuable: purpose. "Hey, little man," Tyler said to Jamie, his voice warm. "First week of high school is rough." "Huh." Jamie nodded, clutching the note tighter. "Can I tell you something?" Tyler knelt down to Jamie's level. 4 years ago, I was the guy writing notes like that. Thought it made me powerful. Want to know what I learned? From across the library. Brandon looked up from where he was teaching a group of students sketching techniques. His latest piece, a mural on the library wall, showed 5 teenagers standing together, their shadows forming the word human. Madison watched as Tyler shared his story with Jamie, as Brandon offered to teach him art as an outlet, as Kyle invited him to join the meditation group. She saw Mrs. Thompson smile from her desk. Her son's picture now displayed prominently with a plaque in memory of David Thompson, whose story continues to save lives. The local news had picked up their story. Then, national media. Schools across the country were implementing their model. But Madison knew the real victory wasn't in the headlines. It was in moments like this, one scared kid at a time, learning they didn't have to face their battles alone. "You know what my dad taught me?" Madison said to Jamie. "He said the hardest battles aren't fought with fists, but with compassion. Not with anger, but with understanding. Not alone, but together." Jamie looked at the note in his hand, then at the 5 teenagers surrounding him with acceptance instead of judgment. Slowly, deliberately. He tore the note into pieces. "Teach me," he said simply. And they did.